This is Inspiring Design, where unique innovators come together to share their knowledge, share their insight, and keep us up to date with the latest industry trends. And here's your host, Rashan Senanayake.
What's up, listeners? Welcome to Season 4 of Inspiring Design with Rashan Senanayake. This is where the best of the best brands, experts, change makers, and thought leaders come together to share their valuable insights, experience, and knowledge, all centered around the growth sector in advanced manufacturing within Industry 4.0, encompassing various industries, technologies, skills, knowledge, trends, as well as stakeholders, all the while linking it back into education within schools and universities. What's up, listeners? Welcome to today's episode, and we have one hell of a tech talk in store for you today. Today's episode is all about bespoke steel fabrication alongside technology integration. Best of all, the special guest for today can literally be described in one word: incredible. I have here with me Dr. Vitor Bottazzi from Watkins Steel. Vitor is a robotics engineer with academic experience working in cutting-edge projects encompassing industrial automation, mobile robots, and advanced visualizations. Vitor's portfolio covers 20 years of experience developing applications in the domains of building information modeling, also known as BIM, enterprise software for the stock exchange market and research, not to mention robotics applied to industrial automation and participation within international robotics competitions. His experience was developed over years of working for major financial institutions within Europe, research centers in South America, and supporting the automotive industry, government, renewable energies within Australia. Best of all, Vitor is now leading the R&D department at Watkins Steel Group. So there's a lot to learn from this man. Let's get straight into it. Vitor, welcome to Inspiring Design. Can we start off with a little bit of background on yourself? What's your story? I know you've got a very interesting one. Tell us a little bit about it.
Thanks for the opportunity of being here with you guys. My journey in robotics and automation started back in 2000 when I was finishing my bachelor's in IT. At that stage, I learned from my father that a new research center has been started in Brazil, next where I live. And my father suggested me to go there and introduce myself with my CV and see if I could find a trainee position. At that time, the Cooperative of Industries in Brazil created this center to support Ford Motors. And I arrived there, knocked the door and showed my CV. Ended up finding an opportunity to start the trainee at the center. That was the time where I found my first contact with robotics because the center was just getting started, and I had the opportunity to assist with the installation of the new equipment arriving. And because I was assisting with the infrastructure of the center, the IT infrastructure at the time, I quickly had the opportunity to make friends in the engineering area and all the other researchers that at the time were supporting the development of the center. So that was the first time that I learned about a scholarship and about a little bit about robotics, industrial robotics. And through some friends that at the time were trainees like me, they introduced me to this concept of how to apply to a scholarship and how to go to further education.
Yeah.
I used my end of the year project, my TCP project, for create this application for my master's in industrial robotics and apply to this position in Minho University in Portugal.
Wow.
So that was my first steps into robotics and my opportunity to move to Europe and have some sort of support if I didn't had this first introduction to the topic in the Cimatec Research Center.
Yeah, right.
So when I arrived in Portugal, it was early times in the Eurozone. All the European economy was pre-organized, everybody excited about the Euro. and I found that like exciting and very motivating environment to dive into research. I've spent 2 years in Portugal developing my project, which was a master's in science, where I was applying like computer-aided design to robotics, extracting the boundary information about CAD files and using that information to program industrial robots. I've ended up completing my master's, and a friend of mine introduced me to his brother, which was like a civil engineer that was starting a software company in Lisbon. So from my master's, I ended up staying another year in Portugal to work in this startup, creating CAD viewers that could visualize and display BIM information.
Right.
So when I finished when I completed this project at the BIM modeling for the civil engineering industry, I decided to move to Italy to learn more about my father's background. My father is Italian, and that was my first motivation to leave Brazil at the time, to learn more about my roots and to learn Italian and to dive into my past and learn more about my family, the Italian side of family.
So similarly myself, actually, your accent is a mix of multiple different nationalities. I love it. That's good.
Exactly, yeah. And like moving from Brazil to Italy doesn't help much because I think the Italians have the worst accent when they try to speak English, and I've just mixed the Brazilian with the Italian accent. Because and then English was my like fourth language that I learned.
Wow.
So yeah, I end up with this weird accent, but that's the best I can do.
Yeah. Awesome. So what made you come to Australia, and when did that happen?
That's a good question. The way it happened is like I was at the time like moving between the Portuguese culture and the Italian one, learning a new language and trying to firm my position as a software developer in Europe. I was seeking like a solid experience in software development, and I ended up like finding a really good opportunity to work in a couple of big projects for financial markets in Europe. When I moved to Italy, I first worked for Generali Insurance, and I was assisting them as a database analyst, assisting to generate reports about insurance policy information, and doing small bug fixes using Java. But that was a job that was very repetitive and not very intellectually stimulating, and that's the reason why I decided to move and search for another opportunity. And the second opportunity working in the software industry, I ended up working for Italian Stock Exchange. That was a great project and one of my best experiences working in agile environment. That project was like an end-to-end agile environment with stakeholders flying from London to meet us on a weekly basis, because it was like a project that was commissioned by London Stock Exchange in partnership with Italian Stock Exchange. So we developing at the time both sites, like London Stock Exchange and Italian Stock Exchange portals. And like it was like a great experience working with like top engineers from different areas, from back end to front end, talking about user interface and how to make the data available for the clients to manage their portfolios.
Awesome.
Yeah. And at the end of this project, I was working as a contractor. So it was a good salary. I was happy in Milan, but I didn't know if I would have an opportunity to stay as a full-time employee after the contract. We had like a huge team with very skilled software engineers. At the time, my perception was that I wasn't one of the best so far, which is tricky because just before I moved to Australia, I ended up like on a dinner with one of human resources managers from Italian Stock Exchange, which asked me if I was sure that I was going to move to Australia for my experience overseas out of Europe. And I say yes, because I was always passionate about like Australia. It's a beautiful country. I've heard a lot of stories about it, and I have friends that have moved to Australia before me. That was the main reason why I came to Australia, to explore this new world.
And explore this new world. I love
yeah.
it. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yes, because Australia is well known about the place of like great opportunities as well, and innovation.
Yeah.
We have stories of great technologies being developed here in Australia, such as Wi-Fi, and more recently, drone scanning, leading robotics, winning very competitive and top of the notch competitions around the world.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the things that stimulated me to come around and learn more about this beautiful country.
Awesome. And obviously now you're in Watkins still, and you're heading up the R&D division as well. So can we talk a little bit about what you do here, and how has the organization Watkins Steel? I know it's a family business that's been around since 1968, I believe.
Correct.
So they've been doing some really cool things. That's why we're here today. Can you tell us a little bit about your capabilities, the story behind the company, and your role here?
For sure. It was a great surprise to be invited to come and join the team at Watkins Steel. I love the vision of the company. I've met Des 1 year ago when he was searching for somebody to assist him to organize and give a little bit more structure to the R&D department. When I arrived here, I found like very talented students. They were developing different projects in different areas, and it was a great opportunity to organize a little bit better the direction of those projects and document all the information so new students could join the team and start to participate, further developing the work that have been started, that was started by the students that like leaded the effort at the beginning. For me, it was like a very sweet spot that I found, because at this job, I just found the opportunity to apply all the skills that I developed over 20 years working in software industry as well as in automation, mainly in research. As I mentioned in the past, I have worked in a couple of big enterprise software companies back in Europe, and I went through my master's in industrial robotics. When I arrived in Australia, because I'm very curious and I love playing with technology, I found that a robotics event was happening back in Southport in 2010. I went there to check out and see what was happening at the time, and that's where I ended up meeting my supervisor and asked him if I could come and have a look at the lab at Griffith University, and that's how I ended up starting my PhD. So after having like this solid experience in the software development environment, internationally working in Portugal, Milan, and moving to Australia, I found the opportunity to invest more of my skills in the research area. So I started my PhD in the field of computer vision, assisting autonomous vehicles to detect the lateral position of the car in respect of the road.
Wow.
So I developed an algorithm that was capable to estimate the lateral position of the car and feedback like the control system, allowing it to take the decisions in which direction to steer.
Yeah, that's incredible. Talking about Watkins Steel a little bit more in detail, what makes you guys unique compared to other steel fabricators, especially with the integration of technologies?
Yeah, Watkins Steel it's a very forward-thinking company. At the time they arrived, I started here as a robotics engineer, and when I arrived, I was thinking that that was the main role or main project that I was going to be working on. They had this robotic welding system that was like under development, and I started to discuss with the students that were here at the time. At the time we had like one PhD student, which recently moved to UK to start his postdoc in Oxford University.
Wow.
So that's another very interesting characteristic of Watkins Steel, is to invest in its own like crew and assist people to further develop their skills. We had students here that after finished their graduation, they decided to move towards the masters as well in mechatronics. So I think that's one of the main advantages of having your work experience here at Watkins Steel
Yeah.
is this possibility of further developing your skills and finding new opportunities to apply your knowledge in different areas.
Yeah.
When I arrived, I mentioned that I was working the robotics welding application, but I very quickly identified a range of other technology that can be used and applied, not just in robotics, but in architectural construction, and more recently we've been working with like mining, infrastructure. There are great opportunities at this stage to explore more the application of those new technologies and deliver the real value of digitalization for businesses. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really want to understand now, so taking a step back here, discussing the steel industry just as a whole, most people are pretty familiar with it in terms of it's something that we use the material of steel towards various construction purposes. But the detailing of mass production versus bespoke steel construction and fabrication is a little bit different. Can you elaborate a little bit about what exactly is steel fabrication at a grassroots level and what's bespoke steel fabrication?
Totally. As you just mentioned, steel fabrication is a process that you transform like steel, right? You get steel in different formats and you can like cut, weld, shape it, bend it, and this is the first challenge, which is create the product itself.
Yeah.
And there is a second challenge, which is to install the product based in the information they receive it from the contractors, right? We are currently one of the biggest subcontractors for steel fabrication in South Queensland, and one of the challenges that we face every day is to manage the results of fabricating steel based in old-fashioned methods for measurement,
Yeah.
and from like 2D drawings as well. So at the beginning, it was a challenge that ended up giving us one of the biggest advantages that we have nowadays. It kind of forced us to invest in technologies that could bring like high accuracy to our process.
Yeah.
And that's when we discover how powerful it is using laser scanning technology in your processes. This allows us to, from early stage, go to the site, scan the environment, and bring all the information back to the office with millimeter accuracy, and then fabricate and create all the solution based in the most accurate references.
Yeah.
When we started to apply this type of technology to solve our internal problems at the beginning, because we had many issues at the time that we have to discuss with the project managers and double check if the information that was like passed to us on the paper format was accurate. We learned that the best way we could do this is to scan the site ourselves and then show the proof that we're fabricating according to the drawings, and that was the way it was supposed to be correct.
Yeah.
So during this process of learning and kind of applying risk mitigation in a very early stage to assist our processes, we learned that the industry has this huge gap that require an entity to supply a similar service, not just for construction, but for a wide area of applications.
Yeah.
And that's the time when DES decided to start HoloVision.
Yeah.
HoloVision is the company that was created to manage the digital assets of Watkins Steel, and found the opportunity in the market to expand its reach and start like assisting other business with problem solving in different areas, from construction, mining, an industry that we never thought we would be able to work with or that would have interest in our services. We have been approached by industries from movies, toys industry as well, people that either needs to represent the environment surrounding them or to scan their products and bring it to the right level of accuracy that can be applied to e-commerce or for any other application that they envision creating and supporting innovation.
Yeah, and obviously these technologies that you've adopted from Industry 4.0 has given you all these other opportunities. Now, one of the things that I want to understand is exactly what are these technologies, and especially for the listeners coming from an educational point of view, we want to know how these Industry 4 technologies that we hear a lot about, that's mainly in the newspapers and the media article, it's kind of seen as a gimmick sometimes, but you guys are actually applying things on a day-to-day life in your work within your industry, and now it's actually allowing you to go beyond just the old school way of working. So can you firstly list what are those technologies that you use on a daily basis?
Sure. Here we have a range of different headsets that we can use to create advanced visualizations. We have, for example, like the HoloLens or the Oculus.
Yep.
They devices they assist with advanced visualizations, but with different applications. When we talk about HoloLens, we're talking about like extended reality, which is different from virtual reality. They both can assist us to load information and represent projects or products in a very innovative way, but they serve for different purposes.
Yeah.
When we talk about virtual reality, we usually apply VR when we need to create a new environment or when we don't have like all the resources available to discuss a specific topic.
Yeah.
An example of applying VR is we've been approached for one of our partners that work in the area of crane. They provide crane services and they have a huge expertise in very heavy lifting for steel. One of the problems that they face at the time is that they planning to lift like 30 tons of steel over a very busy highway. And they need assistance to evaluate the right position for the crane to be positioned in a way that it wouldn't affect the highway or that the lifting wouldn't be risky because of the surrounding environment, which it's composed by bridges, heritage buildings, and the job site itself.
Yeah. So it allows you to plan very accurately and simulate things before any of that happens. So it streamlines the process.
Exactly. And that's where HoloVision comes to play, assisting companies to create an animation and to evaluate the different position of the assets that are going to be part of that operation, bringing that component of risk mitigation. And this can create like huge savings for companies. And we still believe that this technology will still have a huge impact in insurance, for example, the capability of companies to simulate the operations when risk exists and to discuss the value of their policies or at least reduce the policy based in some studies that have been presented using those type of technologies.
Absolutely. And what about mixed reality, robotics, 3D laser scanning, cloud point? All of these technologies are part of your workday. How does mixed reality work within the context?
Exactly. There is a clear workflow that we use. At the beginning, usually we send like one of our surveyors with the laser scanning equipment, and he do a huge number of scans to make sure that we have all the information accurate and that can be used for the planning. So when he brings all the information to the office, we have a very experienced team of draftees and surveyors that can register all the point cloud, which means depending on how many scans you have different pictures of point cloud in different areas of the site. And for this data to be useful, you have to stitch all that data together to match the data, making sure that all the point clouds align so you can extend the information that you have in a meaningful way. So you have like a group of different point clouds that depends on the number of scans that you have, and you're going to align those point clouds, making sure that the information is accurate and can be used further. After you finish the scans, you can bring this information to the site, and then you're going to decide what's the next step depending on the application. If you want the client to have a very realistic experience, you have to mesh that point cloud, which is going to create a surface on the top of the point cloud and use the pictures that are taken by the equipment to overlay the pictures as a texture on the top of that surface. This way you have a very photorealistic experience, and then you can send the client in VR to the site from any office in Australia.
Love it, love it. And obviously these kinds of digitalization technologies integrated into your workflow is what makes you guys unique. How did this industry look like, let's say 20, 30 years ago? And where do you think this is going to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Steel fabrication is a very traditional industry, and it's very secure. And because of that, the tendency is that people will not change their workflow because it just works.
Yeah.
However, we noticed through applying a different workflow and through using all these new technologies, there is a huge room for improvement and for savings as well.
Yeah.
HoloVision came with this new proposition where we could scan the site and then use that information as in the advantage of the client. We have different applications that can be used for different purposes. As I mentioned before, VR is usually when you want to create a new environment, when you transport the client for a new realm. And another very interesting application that we can use is the augmented reality. It's when you can load a 3D model and still see the environment surrounding you. This way, you can use the HoloLens for clash detection, for example. You can see the future, basically.
Yeah.
You can use the headset to load a new walkway that links like a parking to the new hospital, and then you're going to be able to see if the walkway is clashing with any other element of the environment, and address that problem beforehand, so we make sure that when you fabricate, it's going to be precise to the millimeter and it's going to fit on site.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to stress that all this technology exists, but a huge component of the process is the human. So
I'm glad you say that.
Yeah, we have like a very experienced drafting team and team of surveyors that have decades of experience, and actually that's where our clients get the best benefit from our technology, is because our team is capable to extract the best value from the technology and deliver the projects to the level of accuracy that the client requires.
Where do you think this tech is going to be in the next few years?
This technology have been in the market for like a couple of years, and adoption have been really slow.
Very.
Maybe one of the reasons for the adoption to take that long was the price of the equipment. Those headsets used to be very expensive, but they're getting cheap over time. But another important factor is you need a decent infrastructure that allows to deal with the huge amount of data that's generated with the laser scanners.
Yeah.
So having the headsets, having your infrastructure ready to accommodate all the data, and with a team that's capable of scan the data, bring meaningful data to the site, register it properly so it will make sense, and then reduce or increase the detail required for the data to solve a specific problem. I think those are the three main aspects of solving a problem using those new technologies.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned the human capital, because the skills requirement for the adoption of these technologies in what we know industries that have been around pretty much since the start of civilization, there's a massive gap in that at the moment. So I want to take this conversation into the education realm. Do you think currently the 21st century education system aligns with the adoption of these technologies and where Australia needs to be in the next 5, 10, 20 years? Do you think we're on the right trajectory at the moment, or do you think there needs to be adjustments? If so, where do you think that might be?
I believe like the education organizations, they doing an effort to apply those technologies. most of the issues that limit the adoption of the technology by the industry are similar issues that are faced by educational organizations. So the access to the technology, people that's capable of teaching the use of the technology in a meaningful way that can be applied to solve specific problems. This is an opportunity actually for teachers, students that are interested to explore the applications for VR, because we are just at that edge of the change. Many industries just started to play with the technology, and they still trying to find like meaning for its use. And that's one of the things that I loved here when I arrived at Watkins Steel in HoloVision, that I can see this technology applied in our everyday life.
And I think that's the important thing, because the more, I personally believe we've just scratched the surface when it comes to these technologies. We're still trying to figure out, I think, the possibilities. Early this year, I saw the Chinese New Year was celebrated with a coded QR code over the city of Beijing in the shape of a QR code. So that was a creative use towards a mass audience, and using a couple of different technologies towards doing that. And I've seen a couple of different cities doing that, but not a QR code now. They're modeling three-dimensional things, again using the similar sort of creativity. So I think whenever these kinds of technologies are coming through where we're discovering what we're possible, creativity is a big element. How do you think creativity or design thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, all of those elements, all again comes back to the human capital. How do you think that plays a role within your industry?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate on the exploration of new ways of solving problems and the application of creative exercises together with everyday activities. I think that they can boost the capability of workers and students as well to solve problems, to get out of the box and face everyday problems in a different way. I truly believe that this is the best way for us to find concrete applications and new solutions through those technologies. We know that it's very important for workers that are interested in playing with like robotics and augmented reality, virtual reality, to go through the STEM subjects, because they will give you like a solid basis for you to experiment and to learn how sensors interact with the environment, and how to program a robot and make it move in a way that's going to be meaningful, that can complete a process. I think one of the approaches that could be improved in the education sector is to find more meaningful ways of showing the students how important it is to learn mathematics and how fun it is to use mathematics. Simple things like explaining for them and making analogies that a sensor works, a laser or like an ultrasound sensor, for example, works based in the speed of the sound that travels through the air. And an analogy that you can do for that is when you drop a rock in a pool, you're going to see the waves propagating through the pool. They're going to hit the wall and bounce back. So math is used in those cases to calculate the time of flight. That's a technical term. How the wavelength going to travel over the environment, hit an object, bounce back, and then the sensor is going to detect the distance between the sensor itself and the object that's being measured. And this can be applied in ultrasound, laser, and many other sensors. So if we have the opportunity to bring this awareness for to the students, I believe the learning process will become much more fun, and they'll get much more excited to apply those math skills, trying to solve problems in their everyday life.
And I think that's valuable advice, because that's what our educators need to be doing. And I think if we can basically harness the power of the educator and give this information to them, they can then keep putting that in front of the future innovators in the steel fabrication industry, for example. So what are your thoughts on work integrated learning? Obviously, VET, WIL programs, they actually have more integration with the workforces, especially within the trades. What are your thoughts on its importance, and do you have any advice for those sectors?
Yeah, I strongly encourage VET organizations, universities to be in contact with industry and foment these environments of learning supported by the industry. We can see through our work integrated learning program that great ideas come up from students that are still finishing the graduation or starting a master's. They are the ones that have the fresh minds. They coming up to speed with the latest technology, and they thirsty for applying that technology in real problems.
Yeah.
So our experience working with students have been amazing. We have been thrilled with the solutions and potential applications that the students have developed here at Watkins Steel in Holovision, and we can't wait for more. I constantly contact universities, and we have a great partnership with Dave Kumara as well through the Job Assist program. We assisting them with the content creation for the new laser scanning course that's going to start next year, and that has been a great partnership to be able to work with those organizations. They already doing their parts, searching for industry, finding opportunities to partner with and develop great projects together.
Yeah, and I think that's music to the ears of the listeners, because whenever industry, it's a common pattern that I've seen every single industry professional that I've spoken with. It's almost like they're begging for schools to actually reach out to them and have that relationship opened up. So I'm very happy to hear that. What are your thoughts and advice for the teachers in general? Because they're I think one of the most undervalued professions, the educator. They actually hold the power of the human capital, the future human capital in every society. Within Australia, I think the teacher is very underrated. They battle with a number of different challenges. Obviously, keeping up with technology is one of them. Access to information and time, whole array of things. I can talk about that for a whole day. But knowing those things at a certain extent, what's your advice for them, especially within Watkins steel fabrication context, and these technologies are being part of your day-to-day life? Do you have any advice for the teachers?
Totally. I'm very familiar with this area because I used to be a teacher myself, and I know how challenging it is to deal with a heterogeneous cohort, students with different backgrounds, different interests, and how to stimulate them to try new technologies and to invest in learning more about math, exercising, programming, and because math is all about exercising like programming. You have to practice it to get good at it, to understand where are your weaknesses and invest the time to bridge that gap so you'll be able to do more and more complex stuff. But the good advice that I believe I could share with the teachers is to look for the spark in the eyes of the students and stimulate them to try to solve problems they're passionate about, and try to inform them about how they can apply math into their lives, into their everyday lives, how math relates to the problems that they face at home, with their friends, and try to stimulate students to use their knowledge that is acquired through the learning process.
Perfect. And what about the students coming through? What's your advice for them?
For the students, my advice is find something that you're passionate about, invest your time in networking, start your own project, with your friends, find a group of people that you feel comfortable working with, and get started with something. One very important thing for your future in work will be how you handle failure. And this is a process that can bring great value to your life if you know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of trying. This is your time to try. You're young, you have time to commit mistakes, and you're going to learn a lot from the mistakes you're going to take. So just find a project that you're passionate about, and get your friends involved. Get a group of people that you are comfortable sharing your weaknesses, and you're comfortable learning from, and get involved with every single event that you see, hackathons, competitions, and because that's your time to share the best you have and to learn from your experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what you did. You're actually living what you're advising, because you started off your career, going back to the beginning of the episode where you mentioned you simply approached them with your resume at the start, and it opened doors for you into another world. So I completely love that. I feel like we can talk about this thing for days on days, but if students or teachers want to learn more about it, how can they get in touch with you guys?
They can get in touch with us through LinkedIn or watkinssteel.com.au. in case they want to learn more about our bespoke steel capabilities. But in case of they're more interested in laser scanning, in advanced visualizations, they can also find us at holovision.com.au.
Perfect. Vitor, thank you for your time. I've learned personally a lot myself, and looking forward to speaking with you more.
Thank you very much, Rashan.
Technology integration is the next iteration in expanding our human capabilities. Today's episode was just the perfect example towards the future of work and the future of education. So as you can see, the learning never stops. So till next time.
That's it for today's episode. Now it's time to take action and build on the learnings to get inspired. First up, jump onto rashansenanayake.com/podcast and check out the show notes, links, and other relevant learning materials from this amazing episode. Next, if you learned something new today, click that subscribe button and set yourself up to receive live notifications on future episodes, as well as more opportunities to learn from our amazing guests, brands, and speakers. Last but not least, it's time to have your say. Join the conversation and share your thoughts and feedback on today's episode with a review, all while joining many others with a 5-star rating for Inspiring Design with Rashan Senanayake. Till next time.